Hey, welcome back to the Dash to the Draft podcast brought to you by ArmchairAllAmericans.com. I'm your host, as always, Matt Martinez, and once again joined by my co-hosts, Grant Baker and Rob Paul. What's up?
Not much, man.
Just watching the Raptors dominate the Bucks.
We the North.
I don't really know what that means because I don't watch basketball. So, anyways, tonight what we're going to be doing is we're going to be finishing up our position group rankings. We're going to be finishing off with cornerbacks. And what we're going to be doing for the cornerbacks is we're going to be doing 10. Rob and Grant are each going to be giving us their top 10 cornerbacks since cornerback has pretty much evolved into two positions, outside corners and nickels. So we're doing 10 each. And then we're going to be moving on, and we're going to be covering both the AFC and the NFC North. Not the North, the South. We're going to be covering both the AFC and the NFC South divisions. And just so that we can finish that up. So let's just go ahead and get started. Grant, do you want to start us off with your top 5 cornerbacks, and then we'll kind of talk about that?
No worries. So for me, the number one cornerback is a really easy decision. It's Marshawn Lattimore out of Ohio State. 6 feet tall, 190 pounds, somewhat short arms, but really not a big deal at all. 31 inches is fine. He's a great man-to-man corner. He's got athleticism. He's got the fluidity, but he's also got phenomenal technique. He's really good at using the sidelines, an extra defender, kind of forcing receivers there and not give them any space at all to work. Got great hips. He tracks the ball in the air well. He really doesn't have any clear weaknesses. I gave him an A+ grade. Right now, he's number 2 on my big board behind Myles Garrett. So he's just a stud all around. He looks like Patrick Peterson to me at the next level, that level of corner. Number 2, I've got his teammate at Ohio State, Garyon Conley. Like Lattimore, he's a great length, speed, and fluidity of his hips and his feet. He has a really good job of using his hands at the line of scrimmage. He has great closing speed to break up passes. So whenever he's coming out of his back pedal, he drives on the ball really, really well. If he's your number 2 corner as an NFL team, I think you are in great shape. If he's your number 1, he's not as good as Lattimore and the ability to just completely lock somebody up for an extended stretch, but he's a good corner. I think he can be your number 1. Third, I have Marlon Humphrey, another guy, 6 feet tall, track star at Alabama, really nice length. He's got good hips, but he does let receivers get clean releases off the line too often. What I love him for is his instincts. He is exceptional at reading route combinations, especially when he plays back in zone. He's the best tackler out of any cornerback I've seen so far in this class. I think even if he doesn't work out at corner, you can move him to free safety, and he'll be excellent there as well. So I love him in a zone scheme. I think if your team runs a lot of zone, he's a phenomenal corner for you in that system. And then there's a bit of a drop for me to 4. And at 4th, I've got Tre'Davious White. Now, White's a little bit smaller. He's only 5'11", but he's very quick. He's got good speed. He ran less than 4.5. He's got really good ball skills, and he tracks the ball in the air really well. He has phenomenal footwork with his ability to mirror receivers with his feet. Really, really impressive. He might be a little too small, and he is not great at press coverage. So in that case, he might have to move inside to nickel to be successful. But I think if he does move inside to nickel, he's going to be really, really good. I don't have any worries about him there. At 5th, I've got Chidobe Awuzie out of Colorado. 6 feet tall. He's got 31-inch arms. He ran 4.4 in the 40. He vertical jumped 34.5. He had an 11-foot broad. Really nice athletic stats. I really like his anticipation on throws. He also does a great job of driving at the football out of his back pedal, and his back pedal is very smooth. He does a really good job of reading routes. He's very instinctive, really fluid hips, very sticky in man-to-man coverage, and he's got quick feet as well. I'm worried about his strides. His strides are really short, and sometimes that can limit your recovery speed, and he does have small hands, which can lead to drop passes. But I think you can play him outside or inside. I think he'd be better as a nickel, but he can play outside if you want him to. He's just a really nice playmaker as a corner.
Couple things. First off, I really like Trey White. I think he can play on the outside, but I think he would be excellent in the nickel. The other thing is, do you think Awuzie pops into the first round?
I would take him at the end of the first round. I know there's a bunch of teams at the back end of the first that could use a nickel or just a corner in general. Now, Seattle and Kansas City, he wouldn't be as good a fit for them. They prefer longer, lankier corners who can press really well at the line of scrimmage. And we'll get into a couple of guys like that in a second. But maybe like a Green Bay at 29, an Oakland at 24 even. I think those teams could both take him.
Okay, yeah, and the reason why I asked that is Awuzie is going to be attending the draft, and I know that's not like just because you're attending the draft doesn't mean that's like a guarantee, but it's kind of an indication of guys who are going to be going higher than a lot of people may think.
Right. Well, part of the problem is we just have way too many people attending the draft. We should have at most 5 to 10 guys, and they should be locks for the top 15. We shouldn't be taking these. But anyway, yeah, I think he's gonna. I think he's more likely to be in the second round than the first round. But it wouldn't surprise me if he slipped into the back end of the first.
Okay, and okay, so Rob, do you have anything to say?
No, you'll see.
Okay, all right, Rob, go ahead and finish us off with your 6 through 10 then.
Okay, so at 6, I've got Kevin King out of Washington. 6'3", really long arms, which I like. 4.4 40 time and a 39.5-inch vertical jump, which is really impressive. So he's got both great size and length, and he's also a really impressive athlete. I like his ball skills. He made a couple of really nice plays on film that I saw where he came off of his man to somebody else to make an interception, or he just made a really nice read. I don't like his tackling. He just tends to dive at ankles rather than actually square up and hit somebody and wrap up. He does a really good job of shrinking the catch window of receivers when the ball's in the air. So the quarterback has to fit it into a really tight space, and the receiver has to make a nice play. His feet are kind of slow. That worries me. And I kind of question his makeup speed, even though he does have those long strides and he did run well. But I think that a team like Seattle or Kansas City that I mentioned earlier that prefers a longer corner that can press would really like him. Or the guy at number 7, Quincy Wilson out of Florida. Wilson's not as tall. He's only 6'1", but his arms are also 32 inches like King's. He's a willing tackler, but he doesn't show great technique despite his size, so he'll need to work on that. He does have pretty good hips for being 6'1". He does a good job of limiting separation. He had 3 picks in 2016. That's not bad. It's not exceptional. I think he's got great upside because he does have that length, and he does have pretty quick hips for being that size. Number 8, Adoree Jackson out of USC. On film, he looks better than number 8, but I'm worried because the combine he measured at 5'10" with less than 31.5-inch arms, which is not very good. You're looking for 32-inch arms. You're looking for 5'11", 6 foot. But he's a really impressive athlete. He's a great return specialist if you want to bring a guy in that can do that. He's dynamic with the ball in his hands and can make people miss. He really needs to work on his ability to press and use hands on receivers at any point in time. I like his ball skills. Like I said, he loves to have the ball in his hands, and even on defense. He does tend to bite on the first break in a route, so you can beat him on double moves, and his feet aren't very quick. There's a pretty well-known play where he's playing John Ross of Washington, and Ross hit him with a stutter step and go, and Jackson just fell over. He couldn't match Ross's foot speed, and part of that is because John Ross does have lightning feet, but for a guy as fast as Jackson, you would expect him to have much quicker feet than he did. At 9, I've got Fabio Moreau out of UCLA. Much more raw prospect than the guys mentioned before him, but he does have the tools to be great down the line. He's got the straight line speed. His footwork needs some work. It's not very good right now, but I think it can be improved. He's a willing tackler, but he just doesn't have the technique to do it. I think he could be a number 1 corner if you give him the right coaching and let him develop. But with so many guys in this class that are already much more developed that don't really lose as much athletically, I think he's 9th on the board for me. He's a second-round guy. And then 10, I've got Akello Witherspoon out of Colorado. He was horrendous against the run. I watched his Michigan tape. It was one of the games I watched of him. Michigan continuously ran sweeps and toss plays at him because they were consistently getting big chunks of yardage. They scored a couple times running directly at him. But he is 6'3". He is a really impressive athlete. He's got that size, speed, combination that you just love with corners. He tracks the ball really well in the air. When he gets his head around, he does a really good job of finding it and preventing a catch. He does have questionable ball skills. He only had 1 interception despite having a significant amount of pass breakups last year. I'd like for him to add weight to his frame. And he also has some slower feet. He doesn't mirror as well as some other guys in this list. But that's my 10.
Okay. Kevin King kind of screams Seattle corner to me.
Yeah, he does. I know a lot of people have been projecting him there just because he is 6'3". He does have those 32-inch arms. And he looks like a press corner in his own system would be really good for him.
Yeah, take him, convert him to offensive line.
Right, exactly. With every prospect they take.
Yeah. I think you have Quincy Wilson rated a lot lower than I've seen a lot of people have him.
I mean, I've got him at 7. I think it could be a first-round pick at corner. It kind of depends on what you like in a cornerback. Do you want a guy who's got ridiculously quick hips and feet to play in the nickel for you, or do you want a bit of a bigger guy? I mean, I think Wilson could be a good corner in the NFL. I'm not taking anything away from him, but I think Kevin King, if you want that length, the ability to press, he's much better at that. And Awuzie, his instincts, his fluidity is just really impressive. So I had him below those guys.
Yeah, out of these 10 guys, which one of them would you classify as pure outside, or how many of these guys can you think you can
move into nickel?
Yeah.
I would say, well, I mean, I guess you could move a guy in like Lattimore into nickel, but that would just be an utter waste of Marshawn Lattimore, in my opinion. So guys that I could see potentially playing nickel in the NFL, Tre'Davious White, Chidobe Awuzie, Adoree Jackson, and I mean Fabio Moreau might be able to play as well if he works on his footwork. So 3 of those guys I could see definitely playing nickel. Moreau, his feet are a little slow, and that's a bit of a problem for playing nickel. So I'll say 3 of the 10.
Okay. And who is your sleeper?
My sleeper is Corn Elder out of Miami. Really tough guy, really instinctive. I like him to play nickel. The problem is he's really undersized. I think he's 5'10" with really short arms, like 30.5-inch arms. And he ran 4.55 at the combine. He doesn't have great speed to make up for it. So I know some teams have him completely off their board just because he doesn't meet their minimum size requirements to play in the NFL. But he's really tough. He's really instinctive. He has the intangibles. So if you get him in the 5th or 6th round and you want him to play nickel, he could develop for you.
Okay. And whose tape did you like watching the most?
That's kind of hard to say with corners because a lot of times if they're doing their job, they don't stand out on tape. So for that reason, I'll say Marshawn Lattimore, just because for an entire half, quarterbacks not only wouldn't throw at him, they wouldn't even look at the receiver he was guarding because they respected him so much, they just wouldn't even waste their time to look his way.
Yeah, I know Marshawn Lattimore is kind of one of those guys that you have to look really hard to try to poke holes in.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't really see a clear weakness there. I gave him an A+. I think he can play in a man or a zone scheme. I really like him. I mean, like I said, number 2 overall on my board behind Myles Garrett. So,
okay.
Better,
right.
I'll say this. If you look at Jalen Ramsey last year, he came out as a corner, very highly touted. I would take Lattimore over Ramsey, even though Ramsey had even better athletic ability than Lattimore did. And look how well Ramsey did in his first year. I just think Lattimore is more technically sound.
Yeah. All right. Rob, let's hear your top 5.
All right, so number 1, I also have Marshawn Lattimore from Ohio State. I think he's a dynamic athlete. He has elite fluidity. He's raw, but all the traits are there for him to be a great player. He's extremely fast. He has great feet. The hamstring injury history is a bit worrisome. That's kind of the only knock on him because his on-field's so fantastic. He's a top 10 player, and he's the most versatile corner in the draft scheme-wise. He can fit basically anywhere. And he really reminds me of Janoris Jenkins in just the way he moves and how athletic he is. Then number 2, I have Gary and Conley from Ohio State. He's got good size. He's 6'1", 195, nice and long. He's got good instincts. He's far better in man than he is in zone. His ball skills are a little bit inconsistent. He's a very good athlete, a great tackler. I think he's an ideal bump and run man corner. Number 3, I have Tre'Davious White from LSU. He's got great instincts, fantastic feet, but he's a little bit small. He's not physical at all, and he'll struggle versus bigger NFL wide receivers. And I think his home might be as a nickel. and that's probably where he'll start off in his NFL career, and it'll take some time for him to succeed on the outside. But his athletic ability, his feet, and his instincts he'll be a very good NFL nickel. Number 4, I have Marlon Humphrey from Alabama. He's the most physical corner in the draft. He bullies receivers at the line of scrimmage when he's in press. He's got great instincts and the ability to read and react. His physicality translates versus the run. He comes up and he attacks running backs like I've never seen a corner do it before. He's a track star, but his speed doesn't always show up on tape, and he'll struggle versus speed on deeper routes at times. And then number 5, I have Quincy Wilson from Florida. He wows as well with his physicality. He needs to be impressed, and he'll struggle with smaller, faster receivers if they beat him off the line. A lot of the time, he gets himself in trouble. But he's 6'1", 213 pounds. He's physically imposing, and he needs the right scheme. That's why I think with Quincy Wilson, some people are really high on him. Like, I've seen him as people's number 1 corner ahead of Lattimore, and I've seen him as people's number 10 corner because he really just needs the right situation.
Okay. Like I said, I really like Trey White. I've seen Marlon Humphrey fall all the way into the second round on some mock drafts. Do you guys agree with that? Or do you think how early do you think Marlon Humphrey goes?
I actually, in my initial cornerback rankings from 2 months ago or so, I had him as my number 7 corner, but as I watched more tape on him, he came and I moved him up to 4. And originally I had a second round grade on him just because his struggles versus speed kind of worried me. But then as I watch more and more, and there's almost a stigma with the Alabama cornerbacks like D. Milner, and I can't think of anyone else right now, but how bad they've been in the NFL. So you kind of, at first, that I think that probably affected how I felt about him at first. But as I separated that, I realized that he isn't what those guys were. He's so physical that I kind of have a draft crush on him now.
He was originally my number 2 corner behind Lattimore, and then I moved Conley ahead of him because Conley has those ridiculous 33-inch arms and that great athletic ability.
Yeah, no, because Marlon Humphrey's a guy who I would never even consider who would be available in like the late first round, and now I've seen him mocked to Pittsburgh a few times, which makes me happy. So
I think I'm 15th overall on my big board. Another thing I want to say though, you mentioned, Rob, that Marshawn Lattimore reminds you of Janoris Jenkins. I really like that comparison as far as what they can do in his ceiling as well. Janoris was second-team All-Pro this year. I think that's a really good comparison for Lattimore.
all right, so you want to go ahead and finish off your list?
Yeah, so number 6, I have Chidobe Awuzie from Colorado. I think he's the most versatile corner in the class position-wise. I think he can play corner. I think he can play nickel, and I think he can play free safety. So it helps him scheme-wise. He can almost play on any team because you can move him around and fit him where he works best. And he's a fluid athlete with solid feet and a good jam. He'll struggle versus speed, and his tackling isn't very consistent. But the instincts in the scheme versatility make me really like him. And I could see him going as a late first-round pick, but likely he's an early second. Number 7, I have Adoree Jackson from USC. I think he's probably too small to play on the outside, and he should be playing inside as a nickel. His feet are inconsistent. He slips too much. Grant mentioned against John Ross where Ross just made him look silly and he fell down. He falls down on tape more than you really want a corner to fall down. He's not physical, but he's a very good return man. He's got good ball skills, and he's a great athlete. Number 8, I actually have Sidney Jones from Washington, who tore his Achilles at his pro day. But Jones is 6'1". He's a little slim at 170 pounds, but he's physical and he has a good jam. I think he's a jack of all trades. He reads and reacts very well. He's not the quickest or most athletic corner, but he plays well. And he would have been a first round pick before the injury. And I actually had in my notes prior to the injury, he was my number 2 corner. And I think he at the time I had that he has a higher floor than Lattimore, lower ceiling but higher floor. And I really liked Sidney Jones as a top 20 player before the injury. Number 9, I have Kevin King. So King has the impressive size. He's 6'3". He blew up the combine. He ran a 4.43 40 and did the 3-cone drill in 6.56. The athleticism and size make him a potential first rounder, but his athleticism doesn't always show up on tape. He's got average feet and he doesn't play strong. He doesn't really make an impact tackling. He's very raw, but his ceiling is high. He needs the right scheme, which for him is a press zone scheme. That's ideal for him to succeed early. And then number 10, I have Fabian Moro from UCLA. He was a potential first-round pick. He was a late riser until he tore his pec at his pro day. He's got good size. He's 6 foot. He's 206 pounds. He ran a 4.35 40. He's got a very good jam. And you can see the athleticism on tape, but the ball skills, they're average. The feet, they're not great. And he needs the right fit scheme-wise to succeed. I think he's a press man type of corner.
Nice. Where do you see
one thing? Sorry, Matt. One thing I'll say about Jones, and the reason I didn't include him in my top 10, 170 pounds. That's skinnier than any other corner that I have on my list in my notes. The question I had was, can he hold up in the NFL? Is he going to be injury prone? And then at his pro day, he tears his Achilles. So that's why I don't have him in my top 10. Before the injury, first round grade for me. Much like Rob, he was a really impressive press corner despite being skinny. I thought he was really good, but I have significant injury questions about him being able to hold up in the NFL. That's why he's not on my top 10.
Okay. Where do you guys think he goes then?
I think he's a third-round pick at this point, especially with the depth there is at corner. I don't really see a team taking the injured guy in the second round, but they could get a guy like Tankersley even from Clemson. Like, there's just so much depth at corner in this draft that it doesn't help him, obviously. So I don't see him going earlier than the third round.
Yeah, I also have a third round expectation, mid late third. That's what I would say.
Okay. How many corners do you think get drafted in the first round?
At least 4.
Yeah, I'd say 4 or 5.
So I think Lattimore, Conley, Humphrey, and Trey White are all first round guys. I think Seattle or Kansas City will take either Wilson or King. So I'll say 5, and then Awuzie might sneak in.
Yeah, he's the wild card.
I would say 5.
All right. Yeah, this class is really deep.
I was
a lot of
looking
value in round 2.
I was looking at it, and I think there's like 15 corners could go in the first 3 rounds.
Yep. That's about what I have too.
All right. So I think that's all the questions I have. So do you guys want to move on to talking about the AFC South?
My sleeper.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. Rob, why don't you go ahead and hit us up with your sleeper?
So my sleeper is DeMonte Casey from San Diego State. At San Diego State, he was an off-zone corner, but then at the Senior Bowl, he dominated in press one-on-one and was physically just manhandling every receiver he faced. But he's only 5'10", 183 pounds, so he's very small. And his feet, his fluidity, and his athleticism are all average at best, but his instinct and physicality I think will keep him alive as a nickel in the NFL. He's like a 5th-round guy that I love how physical he is.
Okay, and whose tape did you like watching the most?
So I ended up liking Marlon Humphreys the most because he's always playing angry and throwing people around. I've never seen a corner willing to come up and hit like the way he hits. He makes tackles like he's a big hitting strong safety. It's just not something you'd expect when you throw on a corner's tape.
Okay. So do you guys want to move on to the AFC South?
Let's do it.
All right, so the AFC South, we're starting off with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are picking at number 4 overall. Rob, why don't you go ahead and let us know who you think they should take?
So Leonard Fournette is the best pick for this Jaguars team. They've spent money and high draft picks building an impressive defense, and now they need someone to carry their offense. And Fournette, he's a bell cow, and he can set the tone for the Jags. 6'1", 240 pounds, 4.5 speed. He's violent. He finishes runs. He has a knack for breaking away with big plays. He's not just a short yardage power back. He's a speed home run hitter as well. And he can open up the passing game for Blake Bortles and take pressure off of him because they seem to want to stick with Bortles for now. And this pick just makes too much sense in my mind.
Okay, and you don't think there's any issue taking a running back that high? I know the Cowboys did with Zeke, but
for me, not with Fournette. I think Fournette's worth a top 5 pick.
Okay. What about you, Grant?
I think it'd be a good pick. I'm a little worried about if their offensive line is good enough to open up holes for him. One of the knocks, and I put that in quotations on his tape, is whenever he didn't get good blockers and there were guys in the backfield, he was really ineffective, especially against teams like Alabama. So I'm worried about that offensive line being good enough to block for him. My thought was go for a guy like Solomon Thomas. Their defensive line right now, they have Malik Jackson, Yannick Ngakoue, who they got last year in the draft in the 3rd or 4th round. He's been an absolute stud. They just brought in Calais Campbell from Arizona. So why not take Solomon Thomas to play across from Ngakoue as a 5 technique end, let Ngakoue play edge rusher, play Jackson as your 3 tech inside, and let Campbell handle blocks because he's so big, and let your defensive line just dominate.
Okay. See, I like O.J. Howard. And, a lot of people would consider tight end at number 4 to be too high, but, I consider running back to be too high for 4. And then, speaking, O.J. Howard's just a complete player, and give Blake Bortles a safety blanket. If Blake Bortles is your guy, give him something to work with. That being said, Leonard Fournette could also be that guy to take pressure off of Blake Bortles and help him establish a run game. Okay, moving on to the Titans. The Titans have 2 picks in the first round. They have picks 5 and 18. So let's go ahead and start with you know what? We'll just do both of them at once. So, Grant, why don't you go ahead and start with 5, and then you can move on to 18.
Okay, so I think the Titans have a couple clearly defined needs going into this draft. They'd love to get a number 1 receiver. Tajay Sharp and Rashad Matthews are their top 2 receivers right now. They need a go-to threat for Marcus Mariota. That could be a wide receiver, or it could be a tight end. They've got Delaney Walker, but he's over 30 years old. He's going to retire eventually, and they would love to add another guy for those two tight end sets they love. Another thing they would love a lockdown corner, number 1 cornerback. So a guy like Marshawn Lattimore, if he's available at number 5, which I don't think he will be, they would love to have him. And then finally, they would love to upgrade their front 7 because it is old and they need playmakers. So with pick number 5, another guy, Jamal Adams, they would love to have a strong safety to bring in. So at 5, I'm going to say Jamal Adams, actually out of LSU. Let's say they get him 5th. At 18, they could come back around and get one of the 3 big receivers I think will still be on the board, whether it's Davis, Mike Williams, or John Ross, and get 2 of their biggest needs out of the way in the first round with some impact players.
Yeah, I was about to be like, no Jamal Adams, but yeah. All right, Grant. I'm sorry. All right, Rob, what about you?
So, in some crazy world where Marshawn Lattimore is still on the board at 5, Tennessee will take him. There's at this point it feels almost guaranteed Chicago's taking Lattimore at 3. So if that happens, Tennessee I think scoops up Mike Williams and gets Marcus Mariota a true number 1 receiver. Williams physically is just a beast, and his jump ball ability paired with that it reminds me of Des Bryant and it'd be a huge lift for their offense. And then with the 18th pick, Tennessee can come back and hit their other big need, cornerback. Marlon Humphrey would give them a physical freak on the outside. He's the size to throw around NFL receivers. And with Ray coaching, his track star speed could potentially translate to the field. Now, Williams at 5 isn't great value, so I think ideally the Titans trade back from 5, whether it be with Cleveland at 12 so they can get themselves a quarterback. The Titans' best move at 5 is to trade back unless one of the best players is on the board like Lattimore.
Yeah, I really like the fit of Jamal Adams in Tennessee, especially since they just released it's Jason, right? Jason McCourty.
Yep.
I honestly could not remember.
Yeah, it's the twin of.
I believe Devin plays in New England, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. Yeah, it is Jason. Yeah, it is Jason McCourty who they just released. So they can take Jamal Adams. Like you guys said, they could use a lockdown corner. And I do think they'll take one of the big 3 wide receivers. Or, if I want to be different, David Njoku.
That'd be I was thinking about that as well. They would love to have him as more of a receiving athletic threat.
Yeah, because if you take David Njoku, then you just have a big wide receiver who maybe could develop into a tight end. But at the very least, get a receiving threat. Okay, so moving on. Next is the Indianapolis Colts, who are picking at 15. Grant, you want to start us off?
Sure. So the Colts have one of the worst defensive rosters in the league. So really, it's best player available on defense if they want to go that way. The only way I don't see them going for the best defensive player available is if they either took a running back, so Dalvin Cook potentially, maybe McCaffrey, but I think they'd like a guy that's more of an every down back, or if they replace Denzel Good with a guard, so Lamp or Cam Robinson. But I don't think they would take Cam Robinson. I think they would prefer to have Lamp, and if Lamp's not there, get the best defensive player, whoever that may be. At literally any position. I mean, all of them are just they could use talent.
Yeah. And Rob, what about you?
So the Colts need to protect Andrew Luck and build through the trenches. And Forrest Lamp is Zach Martin-esque. He'd be huge for Indy's O-line. He's a very good athlete for a lineman. He can dominate in pass pro. And pairing him on the interior with last year's first-round pick, Ryan Kelly, I think it's the smartest move the Colts can make, unless one of the better defenders slides. Let's say Reuben Foster slides to them for some reason. That would be a great pickup for them. But I think Lamp's the smartest pick for a first-year GM with Chris Ballard.
Yeah, I never really thought about Forrest Lamp, but I guess that makes sense. Andrew Luck was hurt last year, and for the past few years, he's been running around for his life. So take a first-round guy just to solidify that position. They could also, like you guys said, they could take best player available. Derek Barnett, I think, would be a guy who would fit in that mold in terms of edge rushers. But yeah, the Colts have had a bad defense for years.
Yep.
Right. Andrew Luck has carried that franchise, much like Peyton Manning did in his younger years.
Yeah, like their offensive line and their defense has been bad for.
Their offensive line's improving. I'd say it's still young, but Denzel Good is the guy they really need to replace at guard. He was atrocious last year. The other 4, they're younger guys, but they're developing pretty well. I think they're good for the future.
Yeah, Ryan Clark, Ryan Kelly.
Ryan Kelly, Raven Clark, who kind of rotates in. You got Joe Haig, who they took last year late, who is a really good pick for them. You've got Jack Mewhort. You've got Anthony Costanzo. So,
yeah, I said Ryan Clark because I was thinking of Ryan Kelly, but I also wanted to do a Texas Tech shout out for LaRaven Clark.
Phenomenally long arms. I will say that much. I think he had 36 arms. That's just ridiculous.
They're massive. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the Texans. And Rob, you can go ahead and start us off with Houston at 25.
So the Texans pick in the late first round in a weak quarterback class, and I don't think I've on any of our podcasts have gone out of my way to mention a team picking a quarterback until now. That's how badly Houston needs a quarterback, in my opinion. They can't go into the season with a playoff caliber roster being led by Tom Savage, as much as people love that huge rocket arm of his. And Mitchell Trubisky is my third-ranked QB, but I think he fits in Houston better than the other top quarterbacks. His accuracy and mobility they remind me of Alex Smith, and I think if you put him in a similar situation like Smith is in Kansas City and you play to his strengths, he can take the Texans to the playoffs because of the talent around him. And I have Kaiser and Watson above him. I just like the fit of Trubisky in Houston.
Okay. I'll yell at you later for not saying Patrick Mahomes. Grant, why don't you go ahead and let us know your thoughts?
So Houston is going to roll out a front three. Their 3-4. The three defensive linemen are going to be J.J. Watt, Vince Wilfork, and Jadeveon Clowney. They're going to bring Whitney Merciless off the edge. They've got Benardrick McKinney at inside linebacker. They have a ton of other pieces on that defense. It's one of the best defenses in the NFL. They've got DeAndre Hopkins, who is a phenomenal receiver and can go up and get it. Their offensive line's okay. Lamar Miller at running back's a good running back. They need a quarterback, and they don't just need an average quarterback that's going to throw it around, a one-year starter out of a spread scheme like Trubisky. Those guys never do well in the NFL. Literally the best guy I can think of that was a one-year starter out of the spread ever is Ryan Tannehill. And I know Cam Newton qualifies, but he played JUCO, so he doesn't really qualify. So they need a guy that's got a big arm, that's not afraid to throw it up to DeAndre Hopkins, that can move around in the pocket, a guy with really high potential, a guy that's in state that they can look at. Why not give him Mahomes? You know what I'm saying? Give him the laser rocket arm that Patrick Mahomes has. Give him the mobility. Watson would be a smarter choice. I don't like Trubisky at all as a quarterback. I would never pick him in the first round as a GM. I just don't like what I see on tape. Kaiser and Watson would be the smarter choices. But if you really want to be a Super Bowl winning team, I think if you take Mahomes and send up a few Hail Marys and just hope and praise that he doesn't make a bunch of mistakes and can get the ball to his playmakers and can be a deep threat to scare teams, he could be great. I kind of think of it like the Eagles in the early 90s when they had Buddy Ryan as their defensive coordinator and they had Randall Cunningham at quarterback. Buddy Ryan literally said, we're going to give him 10 points a game and let Randall Cunningham make 5 plays. And that's what they did. And they were a contending team. If Randall Cunningham doesn't break his leg in 92, they are a title contending team. I could see a similar thing with Mahomes in Houston if he pans out.
That was a great build-up. I'm not gonna belabor Patrick Mahomes. I'm pretty sure I'm annoying enough on this show. So I think Pat Mahomes would fit in well in Houston. One thing that I was thinking about is, could they be a dark horse candidate for a running back?
No.
I don't think so. I think Lamar Miller is good enough. They need other things.
I forgot they signed Lamar Miller.
They signed him last year. He was there all last year.
Yeah, I know. That's my fault.
He was a fantasy stud too, from what I remember.
Yeah, because I was thinking they still had Alfred Blue. Whatever.
Alfred Blue's still backing him up.
Yeah,
they're fine at running back. Corner would be nice. Losing AJ Boye really hurts. But quarterback is far and away the biggest need they have.
They need to get Kevin Johnson on the field more often at corner.
Well, I mean, last year was his rookie year and he was hurt.
Last year was his rookie year?
No, it was the second year.
Johnson?
It was second year. Yeah, he was picked in 2015.
What? No.
Yeah. He was definitely there in 2016 or 2015.
Who did the Texans take in the first round last year?
They took. That is a great question.
No, that was Kevin Johnson.
No, it wasn't Kevin Johnson. He was definitely in 2015. Hold on. I'm looking this up. Cut this out in the actual show and make it sound like we know who it is off the top of our heads. Who did they take in 2016? Oh, Will Fuller.
Oh yeah, fuck.
Will Fuller. What a horrible pick that was.
What a horrible
Will Fuller. They took him, and I was like, why? He has terrible hands. I know he's fast. I know he can get open on vertical routes. He
had, like,
can't catch the ball.
He had one good game and like
Everyone
early-
lost their minds.
and people were like, he's Deshaun Jackson.
Yep. And I was like, no. And sure enough, the drops plagued him.
He dropped so many balls, man.
Mhm. You can't fix bad hands. So whenever Curtis Samuel comes out this year, everybody, and everyone loves Curtis Samuel, he's got bad hands. I'm sorry, but it's the most important thing for a receiver to have.
I don't like that Curtis Samuel's being talked about as a late first-round pick.
No. He's a body catcher, and he drops a ton of passes. That scares me.
That's why I thought it was Kevin Johnson, because Will Fuller.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I might just end up cutting all of this out.
Okay.
Just because it was a lot of screaming.
Oh yeah, it probably doesn't sound great for quality.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, I don't care about the quality. It'll just be I don't know how I'd figure it out to where we would seem like we knew what we were talking about.
Okay, that's true.
We'll see.
NFC South though.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and move on then to the NFC South. And we're going to go and start with the Panthers at pick 8. Rob, do you want to go ahead and give us your thoughts?
Yeah, so I expect Leonard Fournette to be off the board by pick 8, but if by chance he's there, Carolina has to take him. He fits their power scheme perfectly, and he take a lot of pressure off Cam Newton. Assuming he's gone, I've bought into the idea of Corey Davis to Carolina. They've neglected to get Cam Newton a legit number 1 receiver, and it's gone on for too long. Davis is a great route runner with the versatility to play outside and in the slot. And Kelvin Benjamin's a solid number 2 guy, but Newton needs more help, and I think Davis would fit that offense well.
Okay, and what about you, Grant?
So I think Fournette at 8 is the clear-cut choice in that physical power scheme. He can run downhill. Really doesn't have to catch the ball out of the backfield very much. He can just be the sledgehammer he was meant to be. If he's not there, I think Derek Barnett would be an even better choice. They traded away Coney Ealy. Their edge rushers are all old or retired or retiring. I think that Barnett would be a really good fit for them. I know they like to build from the trenches out, so I think he would make a lot of sense at 8.
Okay, and I think Solomon Thomas, Corey Davis, or Leonard Fournette, I think one of those guys at least is going to be there. Or, Derek Barnett. I think Derek Barnett would be a bit of a reach there. I think Derek Barnett's more of a middle teens kind of player.
He fits their scheme pretty well, though, as a 4-3 end.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing is, I know we were all a bunch of our writers were doing. Actually, we're currently in the middle of it. Another writer mock draft, and I was picking for the Panthers, and I had them taking Cam Robinson at 8. And the only reason I put that is because this draft is so bereft of talent. I'm talking depth-wise at the tackle position. I think that's really gonna drive the higher-ranked offensive tackles up. And so I don't think Cam Robinson's worth the number 8 overall pick. I think if the Panthers can trade down into the middle teens, then I think Cam Robinson would be a great selection. But I think if they can't find another guy, then they're either going to have to take Cam Robinson, or they're just not going to be able to find a tackle in the second round.
He kind of fits what they want to do, too, as far as a physically mauling offensive tackle that can throw people around.
Yeah.
Or as a guard, even, if they wanted to play him a guard.
Okay, moving on to the Saints. Grant, you want to give us – and the Saints are picking 11th and 32nd.
Right. So at pick 11, I think they need to go corner. I think Garyon Conley, if he's available, would be awesome. Even if he's not available, I don't think Marlon Humphrey would be a huge reach here. I know I'm higher on Humphrey than most, so I'll say corner at 11. And then at 32 is really interesting because if Christian McCaffrey is there at 32, I think Sean Payton would love to use him the same way he used Reggie Bush back in the day, as that 700 rushing yards, 700 receiving yards kind of weapon. Outside, I think that'd be really good for them. I know they could use defensive line help. Certainly, an edge guy would be really nice. So maybe a Charles Harris or attack McKinley at the end of the first round if they can't get McCaffrey. But I think corner certainly needs to be at least one of those picks.
All right. What about you, Rob?
So the Saints can go about this draft in a few directions, but the key need is to be upgrading their defense. At pick 11, I also like the going Garyon Conley. He give them a big bump and run athlete on the outside, but if he's gone, because I could see Buffalo taking him 10 potentially. So if he's gone, Derek Barnett would give them a complete defensive line. He and Cam Jordan would be a nice pair of defensive ends on the outside, and Nick Fairley and Sheldon Rankins on the inside gives them a defensive line to really build their defense around. And then at pick 32, depending on where they go at 11, but if they go Barnett at 11, I could see them considering Chidobe Awuzie there because they really need a defensive back. And by 32, I'm guessing Trey White's gone. I'm guessing Kevin King's gone. Quincy Wilson, like all the top end corners are gone. But Awuzie, I'm feeling is going to be there, and he'd be an interesting fit with his versatility.
Yeah, I think 32 is the spot for the corner, unless one of the top guys falls to them at 11. I think with the depth of this draft class, I think they need to take one of the top edge guys at 11, and then take a corner at 32. And I never understood the rumor that was going around that they were trying to get Malcolm Butler. I mean, you already have a first-round pick. Just use that on a corner. Get him for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move on then to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rob, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so Tampa needs to protect their franchise player, Jameis Winston. He's harassed last year in the pocket, and the Bucs need to get a left tackle to protect him. Garrett Bowles from Utah is a nice fit. He's very raw, but his ceiling's extremely high. He's a freak athlete on the blind side, and he plays with a mean streak. Tampa looks like they'll be a pass-first team, and I think Bowles is the best fit for the blind side as a pass pro guy.
Okay, what about you, Grant?
So I also think a left tackle is a massive, massive need for them. Donovan Smith and DeMar Dotson are just not getting it done at tackle. They definitely need a guy, whether it's Bowles or Robinson or even Ryan Ramczyk. They'd be a great pick. If they don't want to take a tackle because they think that the value is pretty bad, I think they're a dark horse for Dalvin Cook. No one really talks about them taking a running back, but Doug Martin has just performed really poorly last year. And then you've got Charles Sims and Jaquiz Rogers. I don't think either of those guys is a real bell cow. And you get an all Florida State backfield of Jameis Winston and Dalvin Cook. So,
yeah, I actually follow several Bucs or drafts people who are fans of the Bucs, and they all want or are kind of excited about the concept of the Buccaneers taking Dalvin Cook. So I think Dalvin Cook would fit in really well there. Keep him in his well, not his home state. I don't know where he's from, but his college state. I also think Mike Williams, if Mike Williams is there at pick 19, can you imagine Mike Evans on one side of the field and Mike Williams on the other with Deshaun Jackson thrown into the mix?
physically dominant.
Yeah. And then also offensive tackle. So I'm not entirely sure. Now we'll just move on. Okay, so finally the Falcons. obligatory blew a 28-3 lead. Grant, you want to give us your thoughts?
Right. So I think their biggest need, or at least one of their biggest needs, is guard. Chris Chester wasn't playing too well last season. He had definitely dropped off from earlier in his career, and he retired. Andy Levitra is, I think, 33 years old, maybe a little off there. But they definitely need another guard in their system. I think Lamp and Robinson are both going to be long gone at 31. So I have them taking Dan Feeney out of Indiana. I know they run more zone. He's more of a power guy, but I think he is a good enough athlete to run their zone stuff. He's also very intelligent. He's not great in pass pro, but he is very technically sound. I think he'd be a good fit at them for right guard. You can plug him in immediately. He's going to be a plug-and-play guard at the next level. If they don't want to do that, I think their defensive front is a question, specifically defensive end. Getting Dentari Poe in free agency from Kansas City was big time. I like him as an athletic freak as a D-tackle. But Beasley was drafted in 2015 as a kind of a pass rush specialist off the edge, not very good against the run. So maybe getting a guy who's pretty good against the run on the opposite side as a 5-tech strong side end. Maybe Taco Charlton. I think he'd be pretty good there with that length and power that he has. Or a guy like Charles Harris if he's available, but I don't think he will be. That'd also be a really good pick.
Okay, and what about you, Rob?
So Atlanta's offense carried them last year, but their young defense looked better and better down the stretch. I think they need to continue to build their defense. Some people are very high on Taco Charlton and see him as a top 20 player. I don't, but I like his fit in Atlanta if he's there. I'm a big edge player. He could. I don't know how great an idea it is to kick him inside on passing downs, but it's something to experiment with. But assuming he's gone, the not sexy pick is a guard like Grant just mentioned. With Chris Chester retiring, they need a right guard. I have written down Dan Feeney as well. He's a solid player. He's got a high floor. He's a plug and play player. He's not necessarily a first round guy, but for a talented team like Atlanta, he's an instant starter. And you kind of just put him in there at right guard, and he's your starter for 10 years. And he's not necessarily a Pro Bowler, but he's a very, very solid player. And then also, if Ryan Ramczyk happens to fall, he'd be a nice get for them.
Yeah, I also put Dan Feeney, just because their interior line could use some help. And yeah, if they want to add another pass rusher, that would be pretty great because you could always use some more pass rushers. Their secondary is solid. I don't really have an idea of what their no. I just really Dan Feeney is the only guy I could really think of besides another pass rusher. So I think they're probably one of the easier teams to try to look at.
They might take another corner also. When Trufant went down, that really hurt them last year. They could use a third corner on that team.
Yeah, probably. Okay, so that's going to do it for the NFC South. And that's all 8 divisions, and then that's every position group. We're not going to be doing kickers and punters. I know they're people too, but
shout out to Bradley Northnagel, the long snapper at a Cal. What a guy. Sleeper pick.
Yeah. So I'm just going to text. So this was kind of a long episode. We really wanted to finish up these divisions, and we kind of wanted to expand on the cornerback class just because it was so deep. So next week, it's going to be early. We're recording this on a Tuesday. Next week, we're probably going to do Monday or Tuesday, just so that way we can get another show in before the draft, just talking about our general thoughts, predictions, and stuff like that. So that's going to do it, I think, for this week. Oh, shit.
Twitter.
Yeah, sorry, I had some extra stuff written in here for some reason. All right, so I think that's going to do it for the show, guys. Be sure to check out all of our amazing content on armchairallamericans.com. Be sure to check out our other podcast, Armchair Express. Also, be sure to follow the Armchair All Americans on Twitter at AC All Americans, as well as Armchair NFL at Armchair NFL. So be sure to join us next week on our final podcast before the draft.